Hey everybody, Adam here for True North Wilds, and this is the gear check. Today, I want to talk to you about the Schrade SCHMBS, otherwise known as the Priscilla brush sword. This brush sword is 16 inches long, it has a rubber handle, it has a black powder coat, and it is made with 3CR13 steel. I think I got that right. I'm not sure exactly what that means. I don't know my metals all that well, but 3CR13 steel is what it is made with. I bought this brush sword for the exact purpose that the title implies. I wanted to clear brush with it. I have a lot of trails here. I have a lot of thin brush. I have a lot of big trees, but I have a lot of undergrowth and berry bushes and all kinds of little thin stuff that gets anywhere from a few millimeters thick to, a quarter inch, half inch, and no thicker. So I needed something to clear out all that thin stuff and help me to maintain my trails because they're constantly growing in. I thought, hey, a brush sword, that sounds awesome, and that should work pretty well for exactly what I need. So that's what I've been using it for. I've put this thing through its paces. I have used it for the last season. We used it to help clear our way to one of our tree stand locations that was in some really, really thick underbrush. And I also used it to maintain my trails a little bit this season, just to widen them out and just keep things from growing in a little bit and just keep it clear so I don't get clotheslined as I go by on the quad, which has happened enough times that I really need to get out there and maintain it more often. So that being said, that is why I bought this, and that is the purpose that I had intended for it, and that was basically how I've been using it. I also put it through a few other tests, which I'll talk about in a moment. As far as clearing the brush, it's been a mixed bag. When we last season were clearing through the really thick stuff trying to get to our tree stand location, it didn't work very well. We ended up having to put it away and use other tools to get in there. When I was using it to clear and maintain my existing trails, where it was thinner, generally smaller stuff, it worked pretty decent. I think the main difference is when we were going through the thick stuff and we were trying to get to our tree stand, that we were in more of a hurry and technique was less of a factor. It was more trying to chop through and get there and clear a rough path through. Whereas when I am maintaining my trails, it's thinner, it's spaced out, it's fewer and far between things. I have time with each swing to really line it up and make sure that my technique is on point, in which case this actually does very well. It's a very technique dependent blade is what I've found. So if you want to cut a rough trail through where one does not currently exist and you want to go in there and just be able to hack away, this didn't perform that well. But if you have an existing trail or if you have an existing clearing and you can take your time, you have to grab one or two bushes or branches and you can line it up and you can take a few good swings and then move on. It works well for that. So it really depends on what you're going to be using it for. I found I don't like to have to really focus on every swing in order to get through what I'm chopping or what I'm slicing. So I don't feel great about the applications of this because I don't want to have to sit and think about every single swing that I'm taking. I want to be able, with something called a brush sword or a brush clearing machete as they refer to it in some places, I want to be able to go and hack away and clear brush without having to sit and think about the placement on every single branch. That being said, it's sharp. It cut through. When I was able to sit and think about my placement, I was able to cut through the branches fairly well, and you can see here that maintaining my trail, I can go through, I can cut a branch here, I can cut a branch there. A good amount of them, I took my time, I was able to slice through pretty easy, so it did work really well for that. I had no complaints, it stayed sharp, it cut through the branches, it has a really nice recurve shape here, so you get a nice long cutting surface, and that helped when I was going through especially the greener, younger branches and brush. It has the bigger section here, so I was able to chop through some of the thicker stuff. I chopped through, you know, maybe an inch thick, inch and a half thick oak branch that I needed to get out of the way. It took me a few chops, but it did the job. It got through there without damaging the blade. I had no complaints there. Again, I had time to sit and place every swing where I needed it, so in that case it worked well. Again, going back to clearing out a rough trail to our tree stand, we had a lot of really thin stuff. We were swinging, and unless we really stopped and slowed down and thought about it, we couldn't make use of this. So it's a very limited application, in my opinion. However, after clearing out my trail and really putting it through the paces there, and I did clear my trail pretty well. I brought it back to the yard. I did a little bit of batoning. I was thinking, well, what if I was to take something like this to a campsite? You know, I've been to campsites in the backcountry where I need to clear out an area for my tent, or we need to clear a bit of a path to get to, say, a latrine area, or a little path from shore to where we're actually going to be staying and setting up the tents, things like that. And I thought, you know, this would probably be something good for that. You can clear a little bit of a path or trim up a path. And then you're going to have it in camp anyway. So I thought, I'll put it through some of the tasks that we might do in camp. So batoning, it works pretty decently. You have such a long blade that you can hit it and you can get it stuck into the piece of wood that you're chopping, and you can baton on both sides. You can see here I did a pretty decent sized log. It's almost 2 feet long, I would guess. I didn't actually measure it. Something around 2 feet long. And it's still pretty green, so it's still pretty tough. And you can see I got through it after a little bit of work. It's not the best batoning blade, but it's not really meant for that either. So all in all, I was pretty happy with that. It did the job. If I didn't have a hatchet or a better knife or something to do better splitting, this will get the job done, no question there. I took it over to the ropes. I wanted to see, after all of my tests were done, I wanted to see how the blade edge held up. So I've had this for a season now. This is my second season using this. We did clear the path to the tree stand, did a whole bunch of chopping. I did the trail maintenance, a whole bunch of chopping and cutting into, I cut into poplar, oak, blackberry, saskatoonberry bushes, and a bunch of other bushes that I don't know the names of. And then I did the batoning and some other stuff, and then I took it to the rope. And you can see that it slices through the rope really nicely. You have a really nice cutting curve. You have a nice cutting surface here with the curves. You got the inner curve here, which really gives you a lot of fine control. And I was able to take the rope and just use this one section for cutting, and it cut really well. The edge held up really well. I've got no nicks in the edge. I've got no rolled edges, nothing like that. No damage to it whatsoever. The braided line, it cut no problem. Whether I used the inner edge here or whether I used this long cutting surface on the other curve side here, pushing, pulling, didn't matter. It cut through really well. The yellow nylon twisted rope, a little bit more of a struggle to cut through. It always is. But with that control and that sharpness that I had here and that control of this thin section here, I was able to get through it pretty well. A little bit harder doing it at the far end. Realistically, I wouldn't really be cutting with that end anyway. I just wanted to see. So all in all, cutting-wise, it stayed sharp. It stayed really sharp. Held an edge really, really well. I haven't had to sharpen it yet, and this is my second season using it, like I said. Haven't sharpened it yet, and I've been using it for chopping and clearing and on all this stuff. So I was impressed with the sharpness. I was impressed with the blade edge. I think it's a great cutter, and it really gives you some fine control, which is really nice too. Lastly, I did a tip test. So I stabbed it into a log and just back and forth a little bit just to see how the tip held up. And you can see the tip did not hold up very well. It's such a thin blade. And this is my major problem with this blade, is that it's such a thin blade. The tip, you can see a good inch down from the tip, an inch even more. There's a lot of flex to this blade, so I stabbed it in. To be honest, this log that I stabbed it into is fairly rotten. It wasn't even a super dense log or super dense wood. It was pretty rotten, and I mainly do this as just to see that this blade will hold up to a little bit of flex, and that's all it gives it, is just a little bit of flex. But that was enough to really warp the hell out of the tip of this blade. I tried to straighten it back in the log there, but it's still got a pretty good S shape to the end here, which you don't like to see. It wasn't like I was putting it through a ton of abuse in doing that, so I feel that's a very big weakness of this blade, is just the ease with which I was able to bend it on a piece of rotten wood. I don't like that. I don't think that is a good feature. Like I said, that comes down to being such a thin blade, and I found this even when I was chopping through some parts of the trail, some parts of the bush. A lot of areas, if there was a lot of springiness to the wood, I really had to hold on to the branch and really get the exact right angle to get a slice through any sort of small branch. And if I didn't do that, a lot of times this would just bounce off of it, and you'd get that flexing, and you could feel the flexing when you're hitting things with this. I think if it had a little bit of a wider spine, then it might perform a little bit better. Just a little bit more weight behind it might make it a little bit more of a cutter and an actual brush clearer. As it is right now, I wouldn't really recommend picking one of these up. You can get other models that are thicker, heavier, even if they're shorter or they're not exactly designed for brush clearing. Get a proper machete that has the weight that is actually meant to slice through stuff. This it fits into a weird position of being a good cutter, but if you want a good cutter for just cutting, you'll have a shorter blade that's better, more designed for cutting. If you want a chopper, you're going to have a better designed chopper that has a big hefty blade that's actually meant for chopping. This fits into a weird in-between spot that really doesn't perform well for any task that you're going to use it on, that you couldn't get something better for. It's a weird blade. It's comfortable. It's very ergonomic. The grip is very comfortable. It comes with a nice sheath. The clip-on strap that holds the blade in is positioned really weird, where as you draw it, you actually slice alongside that strap. And so you can see it's very frayed right now because it's already starting to cut into it. So it's kind of poorly designed placement of the strap that way. But otherwise, you get a nice, plastic sheath, and it holds it well. It's got a nice shoulder strap on. It's comfy to wear. It's basic. It is what it is, but it performs the job very well. I really wanted to like this a lot more than I did. Of course, the question on everybody's mind, zombies. Will it zombie? I figured the last thing left to test out, will it zombie? Because I can't see myself buying this and using it for the brush. What might I use it for? Zombies is always the answer. I had an old cow skull, so I took a couple swings at the cow skull. I gotta say, if you're not planning on stabbing, if you're just planning on cutting, depending on the type of zombie, and I could do a whole video on different types of zombies and the best weapons for them. I should do a zombie video on different types of zombies and the best weapons for them. Anyway, depending on the zombie that you're facing, if you're not planning on stabbing it and worrying about that really easy to bend tip, if you're planning on cutting or chopping into a skull, based on the results of this cow skull, I think you'll be fine. It's destroyed this cow skull. Granted, the cow skull is pretty aged, but I mean, it's still a thick skull, so this chopped through that bone pretty easy. So the answer to zombies is yes. Zombies, depending on the kind, of course. The answer to, should you get this to clear brush, clear new trails, maintain trails, if you're planning on just maintaining a trail and you have your time to sit and place every swing, I could see this working pretty well. It worked pretty well for me in that specific circumstance. If you're planning on clearing new trails or really going into anything thick where you want to just be able to hack away and just get through it, I wouldn't recommend this. I don't think it's going to be well suited to that. I think there's definitely better options out there for that. And I think there's definitely better options out there for pure cutting power as well. So all in all, that's my thoughts on that. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Don't forget, while you're down there, like and subscribe. Helps me out a lot for the channel. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/TrueNorthWilds, on Instagram @TrueNorthWilds, and of course our blog site, TrueNorthWilds.com. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you outside.